right, if we take a look at sequence mode on your calculator, the first thing that you want to do is go to your mode, and we want to go into sequence mode. So once you're in your mode, you're going to go down to the line that starts function, or yours might just say FUNC, and then you would have parametric polar, and then the last option should be sequence, SEQ, or it may have the whole word sequence. So go down and enter on top of the SEQ to make sure that you're in sequence mode. And then nothing in your calculator is going to change in sequence mode except for what's happening in your y equals. So if you press your y equals, you should see n min, and it should be set to 1. If it's not, go ahead and change that now. N min is just denoting what position you want to start at. So this is your starting position. So most often we want to start with the first term. So I would always just keep that at 1. And then you can see that you've got 3 sequences that you can enter in. So in function mode, you had up to 10 functions that you can enter in, but here you only have 3. So you have u, v, and w. So the u sub un, the parentheses is really representing a subscript here. So that would be my formula that I would want to use. And then when it says un min, then what they're talking about there is really what's your first term. So this is your formula that you want to enter in, and then un min, this is your first term. So really you only need to use this when you're doing recursive, when you have a recursive formula. If you have an explicit formula, you really don't. All right, so let's go back and take a look at some of the examples we did and just do them again using this sequence mode. Okay, so this was the first example that we did. That was an explicit formula. So the explicit formulas using sequence mode really there's no real benefit to it as opposed to doing it just using your y equals, but it's an option, so we'll take a look at it. So we're going to put our formula in. So remember the un is my formula, so I'm just going to type in my explicit formula. So I'm going to go 7 plus 4, and then I need that n, and now I'm just going to use that same button we use for x. So it says x comma t comma theta comma n. So each of those represents each of the modes that we have. So usually we're in function mode and we get an x, but now we're in sequence mode, so when we press that button, we're going to get the n. Since this is an explicit formula, we don't have to put anything in the un min. I would again double check that you have your table settings set properly. So remember, what we want is independent on ask and dependent on auto. And then what you can do is go to your table. And now your column headings are a little bit different. So instead of x and y1, y2, etc., you have n and then un. So we can put in our positions again, just like we did before. So I can enter in 1, 2, 3, and then we can enter in any other term that we want. So remember, we wanted the 10th term, or maybe I want the 100th term. So I can get those terms given the position right there. All right, looking at the recursive example that we did using sequence mode on the calculator. Remember, everything should be set, so your mode is set to sequence, and we double check the table settings. So we're going to go to our y equals, and now we need to enter in our formula. So remember, my formula is the second line here. So this one says b sub n equals b sub n minus 1. We're using u, and we have to use that same letter here. Just like in your function mode, you're forced to use x and y, even if your equation is in terms of h and t or whatever. So we're going to type in the u, because we have to use u, and then this subscript, remember, is going to go in parentheses. All right, so we need to get the u. So remember, we need to use the blue u here. So we're going to do second 7 to get the u, and then I'm going to go parentheses, and then I need my n minus 1 subscript, which goes in parentheses. So n minus 1 in my subscript. And then remember, my equation says plus 5, so we're going to go plus 5. And then because this is a recursive formula, I have to type in my first term. So I'm going to go back and look at my equation. My first term is 3, so I'm going to put that first term in. Now when I go to my table, so I go to my table, and now I can enter in my positions and get my terms. So again, we wanted 1 through 5. And then we wanted the 10th term, so now I can just type in the 10, and I can get my 10th term that way. A word of caution here, if you have really large numbers in your table and you put recursive rule in and then you go to your table, sometimes it will take a long time for your calculator to get the calculations ready to go to show you that table. So if you're going to put in a recursive formula, before you do that, I would go back and check your table here and make sure that you don't have any very large numbers in your n column. Maybe just delete them all out so it's clear, and then put your equation in, and then go and enter in your positions so that you can get your terms.